Sorry about that, congregation. My mic was muted. Anyways, hello. Welcome to another edition of the Mormon Atheist. Today's date is March 12th, 2025. And this is going to be episode 2 of Solomon Southwick's book, This is Solomon Southwick's book, A Solemn Warning Against Freemasonry, an address to the young men of the United States, published in 1827. Okay, so our last episode was yesterday, March 11th, 2026. Did I say 25 before? I meant to say 26. Today's date is March 12th, 2026. Yesterday, we did our first episode, March 11th, 2026, on this book, okay? And we went through pages 1 through 14, or 1 through 13 is where we stopped at. And in that episode, we went over the cover page, the dedication page, and which the dedication page is the page that, well, it's the dedication page, all right? And then it's the advertisement, okay? So the advertisement is more or less the introduction, right, to the book, okay? And to the author as well. So as we go along, apostate congregation, we are going to keep track of these names. So in the first episode, we had Eliphat Murdoch. Okay, so we all know Eliphat Murdoch because Murdoch was one of the martyrs, right? With William Morgan. It was said that his body was the one that found. So Eliphat is his son. Okay, and Solomon Southwick has correspondence with him. Okay, so we'll get into that way later because that is in the appendix. Okay, and then so the advertisement just tells you about, oh wait, so more names, right? So more names is, remember, T.F. Talbot is in this book, and T.F. Talbot is also in William Morgan's book, okay? Illustrations of Masonry. I believe there's only like 3 or 4 names in Illustrations of Masonry, and T.F. Talbot is one of those names. So in the dedication page of this book, Solomon Southwick's book, T.F. Talbot is also in this book, all right? Okay, so then we also started the actual book itself. And we ended on page 13. So now we are going to continue on page 14 with Solomon Southwick's book, A Solemn Warning Against Freemasonry, addressed to the young men of the United States. Okay, so one thing, so since I did the video yesterday, apostate congregation, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So this book, the subject that we're talking about, the anti-Masonic movement, okay? It's a warning against Freemasonry. So I had a commenter yesterday, okay, and he's actually been a subscriber for a long time, right? And he unsubscribed to me. And the reason he said was because I believe in the anti-Masonic movement, but yet I believe it's fake. Well, yes, in the context that we're talking about, William Morgan's book is literally telling you that they're creating this thing. It doesn't exist. So that's the problem that the commenter had, was me saying that Freemasonry today does not exist. That is not at all what I'm saying. At all. Obviously, that would be a very stupid thing to say, right? Would you all agree? I think that would be a very, very dumb thing to say. That I do not think Freemasonry exists today? Of course it does. We're being fucking ruled by it right now. Look at the Epstein files. Okay. Is that not Freemasonry? Okay. All that shit, it's all Freemasonry. All of it is. We're in a battle with the Yorks and the Scots right now. That's what's happening here in a Masonic world. That is what's happening right now. Because remember, William Morgan's book and Solomon Southwick and David Bernard, John Quincy Adams, John Adams, all of these people are warning you against this religious institution. The entire anti-Masonic movement is about warning you against, hence anti, right? Okay, it's a warning against this religious institution. Do you understand me? So my guy that unsubscribed to me, right? You know, that's, I don't know why he would think that, because that's just a ridiculous thing to say, right? So you have to understand what's happening here, okay? I'm telling you this story, okay? This is not my opinion. This is historical facts. This book really does exist. It's right here. I'm holding it. I'm reading directly out of it. Solomon Southwick is a real guy. You can look him up. You can Google him. He created the anti-Masonic movement. He was the first keynote speaker. Well, he was the keynote speaker at the first anti-Masonic convention. He's a real guy. This really happened. Okay. You can agree with me or not. It doesn't matter. All you Freemasons out there, all of you Gen Zers and all of that shit that think you know everything. And this is legit fucking history, dude. I'm sorry if you disagree with it, but this book was published in 1827. All the books on this channel are in the 1800s. So there's going to be language you don't like. There's going to be wording, things that you don't like, man. This is factual history. This is not my opinion, okay? These books are written a certain way. You have to take into context what's happening in 1827. What is the government? This is government we're talking about. We are talking politics here, not just a Masonic organization. We're literally talking politics, okay? What we think of today is not what's happening in 1827. That's what the commenter is not understanding. Because I'm removing my modern day brain, okay? Hands down, admittedly, I don't know shit about modern day Masonry. I don't. But Freemasonry in the 1800s, the 1827, the anti-Masonic movement, I do know a lot about. I've read these books. I've read this book fucking, how many episodes? I got 154 episodes, I think. 90% of those episodes deal with this book. For 2 years now, I've been talking about this book. So it's not like I'm just pulling this out of my ass, commenter. You can Google anything I say on this channel, legit anything, and look it up for yourself. Find it. You know, it's there. It's obviously there because I brought it to you. So it's obviously there. So that's one thing that I really want my subscribers and the people that are coming to this channel that's new and all that kind of stuff. This is legit history, okay? The anti-Masonic movement, William Morgan's book, is literally telling you they are creating this as we go. There is no such thing as Freemasonry. It does not exist at the time. Do you understand me, commenter? At the time, there is no such thing as Freemasonry. It does not exist. They're creating it. They call it the Church of Masonry. It's a religious institution called, it's not, it is, okay? It's called Freemasonry. It's a religious institution. It is not the organization that we look at today. It's not. That's just fact. It's not. I'm sorry if you don't agree with that, or if you can't get over that, or if you're not understanding that. William Morgan is legit telling you. Now Solomon Southwick is going to tell you again. And this book is published in 1805. 1827. Solomon Southwick starts writing in 1805 against this religious institution called Freemasonry. So we're 26 years later now. 26 years this guy's been writing about this organization. Do you understand me? They're telling you this does not exist. They're creating this religious organization. It's a religion. Freemasonry is a religion, is what I'm telling you. That's what they're telling you. It's a religious institution. Okay? In 1830, they split. The Church of Christ, which we're going to get into, the Church of Christ takes it and it splits. That is what the death of William Morgan signifies, is that split. That is the death of the modern man, the commoner. William Morgan was a commoner. William Morgan is an allegory, okay? We lost the anti-Masonic movement. Okay, so let's get into this. Page 14. Keep your Mormon hats on, okay? As we get into this, because there's going to be a lot of names. There's going to be a lot of historical things that the LDS world already knows, but in a Joseph Smith Mormon fashion. Okay, so I want you to have your comparison hats on, your Mormon comparison. I want you to listen to this, okay? Listen to these names, listen, and I want you to write down these names and the names of these orders and the names of the towns, okay? Because all of this has significance because of the Joseph Smith story. Joseph Smith was in Canandaigua, Canandaigua jail. Joseph Smith Sr. was with Eli Bruce. You know, all of these stories are in this book and David Bernard's book, but not any part of Mormonism. But you're going to hear the exact same story. Okay, so let's go. Page 14. The outrages committed on the property. Okay, now another thing before we get going on, it's a new episode, so I have to mention these books. This there is out of print. This is a reprint book. Okay, Legacy Reprints. Kessinger Legacy Reprints is who I got this from. So the wording is all smudged from like the ink dots and like, you know, because this was all on a printing press in the 1827. So sometimes they'll use instead of a C, they'll use an E, right? And so sometimes the words are like smudged out. So, you know, takes me a second to kind of, like this is on page 14 right here, it starts out right away with a big giant ink blot, right? So that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with when we read these old 1800s books, right? All right. The outrage is committed on the property and person of Miller. We're talking about David C. Miller, right? Coming back from the last episode. This delegation, right? You got it. The delegation in the last episode was the Royal Archmasons were picked as delegates for the for the government system of their towns or whatever, right? So they're talking about in that particular thing, they were talking about like the president, the delegates for the president. So what me and you today call the delegates in the presidential party, right? Solomon Southwick is telling you where those delegates came from. The delegation consisted of some of the first men in the Western District, embedded, assembled at Lewiston, the Lewiston Lodge, right? And hence has been styled in the Lewiston Convention, right? The Lewiston Convention was that's where they had the first anti-Masonic convention, was at the Lewiston Convention in Lewiston. They entered fearlessly and honestly upon the duty assigned them, and have ever since pursued their object steadily. Through their exertions, principally, 4 of the conspirators, right? Previous episode, we were talking about the conspirators of the kidnapping of Morgan and how he said Lodum Lawson's name, right? Those who took Morgan from the jail at Canandaigua were indicted, put on trial, and convicted on a plea of guilty in Ontario County. And 3 have since been convicted of kidnapping Miller after pleading not guilty in Genesee County. So they pled not guilty, and then they were later convicted. See, that's the part of the story that is not told. A considerable number stand indicted, whom have not yet been tried. On account of both Morgan and Miller, it is true that 16 or 17 were tried at the last Court of Sessions in Ontario County and were acquitted. So 16 to 17 were acquitted, right? But whoever will pursue attentively the testimony as reported will find abundant proof in it of the abduction, if not the murder, of Morgan, and will perceive at the same time such a mass of non-me ricordo statements as was never before exhibited in any court of justice, right? So their non-me ricordo is basically, you got to remember, this is 1827. So the laws back then is what me and you today would be called like pleading the fifth, but like filibustering at the same time, right? A plead the fifth through filibuster. The judge, however, one of the oblate in the state, I mean Judge Howell, right? We're going to get into who Judge Howell is. In charging the jury, declared that the proof to establish both the conspiracy and its consummation was full and conclusive, that Morgan had been unlawfully kidnapped and carried off was abundantly certain, and that he had been subsequently unfairly put to death. There was too much reason to believe, he stated at the close of his charge, after summoning upon the evidence and explaining the law, that the testimony through abundant to something, abundant to, the words are smudged. I think it says prove. Through abundant to prove abstractly all that was alleged, did not charge these defendants with the crime. So even though there was more than enough evidence to charge them, the Judge Howell, did not charge him. Let's see if I don't remember if we already named Judge Howell. I don't think we did. But anyways, keep Judge Howell. He's going to keep coming up, so keep that name. The time of the court, he remarked, had, notwithstanding, been profitably spent in eliciting testimony which must ultimately unravel this horrible mystery. So that's what the judge said. The judge said it wouldn't have been standing been profitably spent, so it wasn't worth their time, right? Because they already knew. They knew what happened to William Morgan, okay? We're going to get into it, right? In hindsight, we can say that, but at the time, it's a mystery, right? In eliciting the testimony, okay, now here's Southwick is writing again. I give you, gentlemen, the precise words of an able and upright judge, as reported by the several reports of the trials in question. It appears then that in three several and distinct courts of justice, the Ontario Circuit, at which Judge Thorpe, THROOP, presided. When the first 4 conspirators were convicted, the Genesee Circuit, at which Judge Birdsall, BIRDSALL, presided. When 4 were tried and 3 were convicted, and the Ontario Sessions, at which Judge Howell, there we go, that's where I remember Judge Howell from, the Ontario Sessions, okay. Judge Howell presided the Ontario Sessions when the 17, save 1, who sworn off the trial for want of a witness, right? That's going to be very important because later on in the William Morgan stories, right, 2 of them flee, right? Similar to the Joseph Smith story, right? Were tried and acquitted. It appears, I say, that in these several and distinct courts of justice, the facts of the conspiracy and its consummations have been established by abundant, full, and conclusive legal testimony. Okay, so we know these are the killers and kidnappers of Morgan, which later on we are going to learn exactly what does that mean exactly. Is it just cut and dry? We know the kidnappers and killers of Morgan, or is there allegory to the story? Because you got to remember, this is Masonic, right? So these guys can't just come out and write and say, hey, here's what happened and here's why. Right? Because they'll kill you. They have a track record of it. The blood oaths, right? Everybody knows about the blood oaths, okay? The blood oaths do not go away in Mormonism. They continue, right? So all of this stuff is a continuation into Mormonism. Do you understand me? This is where they separate. Okay, we're now on page 15, but we're like towards the bottom of page 15. How Oh, we took a hit there. The starship took a galactic burst. Sorry about that, folks. I hope we're back now. Here we go. So, how often then can any editor assert that this excitement has been got up for electioneering purposes? It's all fake. It's for electioneering purposes. Okay? What are the Mormons worried about, or what is everybody worried about the Mormons in Ohio, Missouri, and Illinois? They're voting in blocks. That's what's happening right now. The Masons, the Mormons, are voting in blocks, right? So we have clear track record of this, right? The pushback was so strong that it caused them to branch out, right? So now we have a religion and an organization. Because remember, the entire purpose of the religious part of it was so women and children could have a place to pay their dues, because the men have to pay dues. So now the women and children, right? So it's like an extension, because men or women and children aren't allowed in Freemasonry. So we have to have a place to go for them to do their part, which is the Mormon Church, which is the Church of Christ at the time, the Church of Christ. Okay. Okay. Would it not be, on the other hand, an eternal disgrace to any portion, number, or section of the citizens of the United States if they could sit quietly and tamely and see their friends, their neighbors, their fellow townsmen kidnapped and carried off by violence contrary to all law? What are happening to the people that are blowing the whistle on the Epstein files and all this stuff? These people, they all die mysteriously. They all end up with a heart attack. They all end up, they all end up poisoned, or they all end up, something like that, right? And then it's not only that guy. It's like the guy that does the autopsy. He mysteriously dies. Or the guy that, took, the guy that drove him to wherever, he mysteriously dies too, right? So that's in today's world. So this stuff never stopped, apostate congregation. The anti-Masonic movement failed. Contrary to law, human and divine, right? Contrary to law and human and divine, to be confined perpetually, life in prison, or assassinated at the will and pleasure of their kidnappers, right? I mean, this is legit civic moral duty, is what he's talking about. Have you ever heard the song by Waylon Jennings, Lukenbach, Texas? I think it's called "The Basics of Life" is the name of the song, right? Let's just get back to the basics of life, man. That's what every Renaissance, every age of enlightenment that we have had in world history, all goes back to something that was not known about, right? They hid the Greek. The Greek was covered up. Well, they discovered it again, and it created a Renaissance, right? All through history, all this stuff, it goes back to previous times, right? They go back to the basics of life. There's a lot to be said about that. That's what we're doing right here. We're going back to 1827. This is when, at the time, all of this stuff is being created, the late 1700s, right? You could arguably say that the 16, 17, and early 1800s is when all of this stuff is being thought about and, tried and implemented. And, you got 250 years of trial and tribulation, the age of enlightenment, apostate congregation. And it's refined by the time we get to by the time we get to the millennium, 1800, they have a pretty well-defined system, And if you look through history, every single time they implement this system, it gets rejected. Every time. Go back and look at all the martyrs through time that have something to do with this Masonic style communistic order of you pay us and we will protect you kind of a thing. And it turns out they become fucking not protecting anything. They just are fattening their wallets. And, you give up freedom for security. And in the end, you have neither, right? This is all basic stuff that we have gotten so far away from in today's world of just the basics of what this country is even supposed to be about, right? Or what this country even is, right? Land of the free, home of the brave. Where is that? Where is land of the free, home of the brave? The brave are the people willing to stick up for that freedom part. That's what we forget about. You give up freedom for security, right? Look at all the cameras that are around today. You can't take a piss on a sidewalk without getting arrested. Well, you're not going to get arrested, but you're on some video somewhere, right? A traffic camera, somebody's ring camera, some knucklehead over here is just shooting a honeymoon video and you're in the background piss bombing the dude, like it's everywhere. You give up freedom for security. In the end, you have neither. This is basic civic duty stuff, basic humanity stuff. People should have rights. We're going to get into all this. And it all pertains today, in today's world, to what we're doing today. It's stunning to me, apostate congregation. Like and subscribe to the channel. All right, let's keep going. It would not be, on the other hand, an eternal disgrace to any portion, number, or section of the citizens of the United States if they could sit quietly and tamely and see their friends, their neighbors, their fellow townsmen kidnapped and carried off by violence, contrary to all law, human and divine, to be confined perpetually or assassinated at the will and pleasure of their kidnappers. I should esteem the man who could see all this without being highly excited as a wretch, wholly principled, and totally unworthy the name of an American citizen. Fucking bomb, mic drop, boom. The hair on my arms just stood up. Should I esteem the man who could see this all without being highly excited as a wretch, wholly unprincipled, and totally unworthy the name of an American citizen? Fuck you if you do not do your civic duty and stand up for the freedom of this fucking country. We are the only country in the world that we can talk shit about our government on. The only fucking one. We should protect that. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't give two shits. That freedom is what I want to protect. And along with that freedom comes all the other stuff too. So this is not just a one free speech. This is literally American fucking freedom of what this country was, even the basics, man. Lukenbach, Texas. Go back to the fucking basics of life, man. Page 16. But to return to the Lewiston Convention, this patriotic body, to whom the people of the United States will hereafter look with gratitude. Fuck yeah, the Lewiston Convention was the first anti-Masonic convention. And Solomon Southwick was the keynote speaker at that convention. Have been principally instrumental in producing the results above stated. It consisted of 38 of the most respectable citizens of the Western District, of all parties, and so far from there being any ground to charge them with electioneering or selfish views, okay, there's no grounds to charge them with electioneering. Only one of them has come forward since as a candidate for office, and he has been brought forward by the voluntary suffrages of his friends and fellow citizens. They have just published their entire result thus far. For their long, laborious, and important investigation in a pamphlet of about 80 pages, octavo is the name of the pamphlet, okay? In a pamphlet of about 80 pages, octavo, OCTAVO, and I venture to say that there is not an honest, sensible man in the United States who will not be thoroughly convinced on reading it that Morgan was not only kidnapped and murdered, but that David C. Miller, the independent editor of the Republican Advocate at Batavia, would have shared the fate of Morgan had he not been rescued by the anti-Masonic party from the hands of his kidnappers. The anti-Masonic party rescued him from the hands of his kidnappers. Okay. It may not be amiss to state that among the signers of the report of the Lewiston Convention, okay, so now we know there's a report of the Lewiston Convention and there were signers, okay, so we can look that up, are gentlemen who hold stations of honor and reasonably under the government of the United States, responsibly under the government of the United States. I have not the report at hand at this moment, but I recollect distinctly the names of 3 officers of the federal government: O. Benjamin, Trumbull Carey, Trumbull. These are anti-Masonic names, okay? And Bates Cook, Bates, Esquires. So all of these are Esquires. These gentlemen, together with their worthy and patriotic colleagues, have labored almost incessantly for 9 months or more to unravel this horrid mystery. Okay, so there you have it. O. Benjamin, these are all federal government, they're anti-Masons, right? And they were all members of the federal government. Page 17. They have not only spent their time in the investigation, but large sums of money in searching the Niagara River and Lake Ontario for the body of the hapless Morgan, which was undoubtedly buried beneath those waters. Remember what happens when you bury it, your body is spread to the east, to the west, to the north, to the south. Your bowels are removed and burnt in the center. Okay? Those gentlemen, I mean, all those who formed the Lewiston Convention, deserve the highest praise instead of the least censure, for their labors have been directed to unravel a conspiracy, the principle of which goes to the entire subversion. I think it says subversion. Subversion. I don't know what that says. Subversion of our federal and state constitutions. Away then with the groundless and calumniating assertions that they have been actuated by electioneering. Right? Remember what he already described before, that this is part of their process, is they try to discredit you, right? They talk trash on you, they make you look bad, they talk about your emotions, and they say that you're emotionally unhinged and all these sorts of things, right? Okay, or selfish motives of any kind. This gentleman is the last article which I shall ask you to publish in the National Observer. However, the National Observer, you can actually Google and look, right? Look it up. However, I shall continue the subject which has given rise to this letter, so long as I have health and life to perform the task. In my next paper, I shall develop facts which, if true, and I solemnly believe them to be so, will add a tenfold deeper hue of darkness to the cause of those who, from the abduction of Morgan and Miller to the day, have been, though open and undisguised, advocates of kidnapping and murder. To this day, have been open and undisguised advocating the kidnapping and murder. I have heard more than 100 Freemasons assert that Morgan, if killed, was served right. So he deserved to die, is what So remember, we're talking about an allegory, the common man. William Morgan is the death of the common man, okay? And so these people are proud. They've implemented this institution, right? So they're all members of this religious. Think about the Mormon apologists today, right? And the missionaries and the defenders of faith and all that kind of shit. That's what these people are. And that's what Solomon Southwick is combating, right? Solomon Southwick is an anti-Mason. Me and you are anti-Mormons. So naturally, we're going to have apologists come at us. That's what's happening to Solomon Southwick and these people. These Masonic apologists are coming out and they're doxing these people, so to say, right? They're making them look bad. In their day, it was to make your integrity. Same thing as they do today. They try to make your integrity look bad. They do this today still. Everybody does. Government, everybody. Scientology, they make the person look bad. That's the whole intent, right? Don't believe that guy. They totally try to discredit the person. They're mentally deranged, or they're mad, or they something happened. They're whatever the case is. Well, sometimes people are just like, no, hey, this is bullshit. And it's becoming a problem. You understand? And so that's what's happening. Okay, so I lost my place now. Damn it. All right, here we go. Okay, so he just got done saying that the Masons are all saying that Morgan deserved to die. What induced me to take ground when I first came out in my editorial capacity on this subject was the declaration made to me by a Royal Archmason, a very respectable lawyer, that he knew that Morgan was killed or executed, although he had taken no part in it himself. Right? So now we know that there's a Royal Archmason told Solomon Southwick that he knows who killed him. I asked him how he knew it. He replied, how do ordinary facts come to your knowledge? How do ordinary facts come to your knowledge? Exclamation point. That was his reply. Remember, this is Masonic, so we're going to get into code speak. Read between the lines, okay? I know it in the same way. I asked him if he thought it right. He said in reply that he would not. He said in reply that he would not have had a hand in it for the world, but the rascal was rightly served. This conversation was among the most important considerations which induced me to throw off all Masonic trammels and put my shoulder to the editorial wheel. Okay, where are the editors today? Right? Where are the journalists? Right? There's no fucking journalists anymore. There's no investigative reporters anymore. Solomon Southwick is a legit investigative reporter. He's investigating this shit. Okay, he wants to know what happened. Why is this taking place? He knows, but he's telling you the only way he can. Not the best way, the only way. To bring to light, if possible, the whole truth in the case. I drew the conclusion whilst yet talking with the gentleman above mentioned, the Royal Archmason, that if men like him, who had been classically educated, okay, this is in 1827, and he has been classically educated, okay, so we know they're reading the classics, the Greek, okay, so these are not dumb fucking people, okay, the guy, if men like him, who had been classically educated, these are not backwoods, stupid people, okay? I know in Mormonism, they try to keep you thinking that these are all just dumb fucking people that don't know how to read or write, or, they're just idiots out there running amok, and had studied a science which teaches with so much discrimination and correctness the nature of all oaths. He is the Danite, like we could say in today's world, he is the Danites, right? You understand that? Who had studied a science which teaches with no such discrimination and correctness, the nature of all oaths and obligations could be rendered so fanatical by their Masonic ties, it was time to destroy the institution entirely. What is happening with the Epstein files? It is time to destroy the institution entirely. We are legitimately talking about the Mormon Church here, apostate congregation. Do you understand me? For what I have stated is strictly and literally true. And I can add with equal truth that the person alluded to in his general character and habits, a worthy man. What's a fucking Mormon, right? You look at a Mormon and they're they'll kill you with kindness. They got their shit together. You know, they know it, but they will fucking stab you in the back. The oath, your allegiance is to the church. First and foremost, a Mormon's allegiance is to the church. A Mason's allegiance is to the church. The religious order. The religious order. Do you understand me? The religious order. And of respectable talents, as well as standing at the bar. Because he's a lawyer, remember? So he's standing at he's a lawyer, right? That's what that means, standing at the bar. His name, of course, I shall not reveal, because at that time he addressed me not only as a Mason, but as a man to whom he could freely deliver his opinions in a confidential way, right? So Solomon Southwick has extreme integrity, okay? Because back in the day, that's what you had. That's all you had was your word. If your word was no good, you were no good. So if you were known as a shyster, everybody fucking knew you as a shyster. We've lost that today. We don't need no background check. We don't need none of that shit. We need public opinion. Public opinion is what we have lost. Okay? In fact, independent, we're on page 18. In fact, independent of any such revelations, the struggle I had in my own breast to throw off entirely my obligations to the order, italicized, satisfied, and of its dangerous tendencies, and the absolute atrocity of curtailing by some lawful and constitutional means its mysterious and destructive influence on civil and political liberty, right? The Masonic institution directly goes against God and country. That's what the anti-Masonic movement is about. And the religious institution is the Mormon Church. Freemasonry. In 1827, this is what Freemasonry was. Back to my commenter that I started out with. This is what Freemasonry was in 1827. It is being created to what we know it is today. You understand me? That's what these guys are saying. That's not my opinion. That is not my opinion. That's what they're saying. I remain, gentlemen, with the highest respect, your friend, to the obedient servant, Solomon Southwick, Albany, September 27th, 1827. Page 19. From the preceding letter, something young, I can't read that. It's on page 19. It's all super jacked up right there on the top. Apostate congregation, maybe that's where we'll stop at, is on page 19. I went way long on my last video, just because it'd been a while since I'd done a video, and I was kind of getting into it and I was having fun. And I really, really highly recommend Solomon Southwick. He is hands down one of my favorite authors. He has so much history, and he is known as the common man. Like, he is for the common man, right? So he is for the pipeline worker. He's for the, he has a book that's called The Plowboy. It's Plough, boy. And it's what that book is about the farmers. It's about the farmers and how they're kind of getting fucked. And the plowmen, right, the plowboys, were the ones that were getting fucked. They weren't getting their pay. It's all political. Solomon Southwick is extremely political. Okay, we're getting into politics. This is not religious. Okay, Mormonism is religious. This is politics. Mormonism starts out as a political entity. Do you understand me? Does that make sense? Mormonism starts out as a political entity, a religious institution of Freemasonry. It is a legit political institution. That is why Mormonism is still around today. Mormonism will never go away. Look, as long as this Epstein file shit and people just completely dismiss the Mormon influence in the Epstein files and in how that operates, that whole, right? Think of all the Freemasonry that's involved, all of the magic cultic shit that's involved. On this channel, we talk about the Solomonic magic. When Joseph Smith died, he had the third pentacle of Jupiter in his pocket. That is the money magic of Solomon. This is Solomonic magic. Okay? My logo is the third pentacle of Jupiter. That is actually what was in Joseph Smith's pocket, is that my logo. It wasn't blue, it's silver. And in 1888, I put it in my community chats. Woodruff Wilson, or Woodruff, the fuck is that guy's name? Wilfred Woodruff, that's his name. Wilfred Woodruff in 1888 did a article in the Deseret News that he saw that Jupiter talisman with his own eyes. Okay, in 1888, in Deseret News, Wilfred Woodruff says he saw it with his own eyes. So we know it's real. Okay, and plus the church says it too. It's in church archives. You can Google this shit. It's legitimately in the church archives. So the magic is all over this, is my point, right? It's Solomonic magic. All these rituals and blood things and all of this is Solomonic magic. And in a religious context, the Mormon church. So every time you go to church, you are literally going through a ritual. Every time you go to church, think of the Mormon temple as the Temple of Solomon. And then all of the church houses are the individual lodges, right? The Masonic lodges. That's how Mormonism is structured. And then you have your levels. It's literally the same exact thing, your levels. You know, you have your apprentices, you have your the craftsmen, then you get into the different bishopric and all this kind of shit, right? And you work your way up, right? So it's the same thing. It's the exact legit same thing. So we're going to end on that, apostate congregation. We will continue the next episode on page 19. So thank you, apostate congregation, for coming. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Remember, in the words of the late, great Solomon Southwick himself, the ashes of Morgan will rise again. And here we are, apostate congregation. We are reading Solomon Southwick's work. We are reading William Morgan's work. We are going to read David Bernard's work. We are going to get into John Quincy Adams Jr. Or I'm sorry, we're going to get into John Adams and John Quincy Adams. Okay. John Quincy Adams is John Adams Jr. Okay. Presidents of the United States. The first father-son president of the United States was the Adams. John Quincy and John. John Quincy is the father. John is the father. John Quincy is the son. Okay, congregation, this channel will never be monetized. Never be monetized. So the only way you can support this channel is to like, subscribe, share, comment, hit the bell, all that kind of good stuff, because we're not monetized, and not being monetized heavily suppresses the channel. On top of that, we're just constantly getting hit with just dumb shit anyways. And so, yeah, so subscribe to the channel, like, comment, like the comments. If you have something to add to the comment, please do it. Yeah, and just let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of the subject. Are you interested in Solomon Southwick? Do you know who he is? Have you found anything interesting about him? What have you discovered about Solomon Southwick? And so far, what have you come up with some of these names that we've already mentioned? T.F. Talbot is a huge name. T.F. Talbot so far is, in Mormonism, one of our biggest names so far. Okay. So Judge Birdsall is going to be really big. We got so much stuff to go. All right, apostate congregation. Thank you, everybody. Like and subscribe, and we will see you on the other side.